There's something you have to see.
If you loved the season 1 finale, you're going to love this episode, because it's a part 2 of the water park adventure. With that whole day being a disaster, you can imagine the only thing being worse is to then be stuck in traffic on the way back home, which is what happens. But let's rewind a little, as it's important to note that Hal indirectly caused this crash.
All right, Silver Toyota, you win this round. Go ahead, get there 2 seconds sooner.
Hal feels the burden of taking another man's life and begins having an existential crisis.
When I keep rolling it around in my head, how much time do I have left? And what have I done with my life?
This pays off in a great way at the end of the episode. This episode also has a great Lois story, a great Malcolm story, a great Dewey story, which is a continuation of the balloon skit, a great Reese story, and a great Francis story. This is definitely a contender for the #1 spot. So let's dig in and find out who wins. Malcolm meets a girl in the traffic jam, and it turns out she's actually a really good match for him, teaching him things like manipulating adults to pretend to be your dad.
Here's a little secret, Malcolm. Whenever you want something, everybody's your dad. Hi, Daddy! Hi, Daddy!
No! No!
And she doesn't tolerate his constant whining, so it seems they were pretty much made for each other. But with the slight snag that she lives in Canada. Will this relationship work? Well, again, this answer is paid off in a great way towards the end. Elsewhere, Dewey is hijacking his way home in a funny sequence of changeovers between lifts. Most notably and most hilariously, he stresses out this kind old lady so much with his constant questions and infuriating nursery rhyme singing.
A, B, C, D.
It's E, dear. A, B, C, D, E, E.
I know. A, B, C, D.
That it causes her to go buy a packet of cigarettes. While she's gone, a robber takes the car as a getaway and soon realises that Dewey's in the back seat. And of course he's unfazed by this potentially dangerous new stranger. At the academy, we have this really simple but entertaining story of Francis proving he can eat 100 marshmallow peeps. Well, not peeps as such, but the version that the show created called quacks. The really funny part of this is the cadets counting each of the quacks being swallowed.
63! 62! 61! 62!
This is a perfect demonstration of how gross out humour can still be effective without being visually disturbing. And back at the scene of the traffic, we have Reese's story. And this is the first time I found myself rooting for Reese to succeed. A selfish ice cream truck driver is refusing to sell ice creams to the kids, who are desperate for a cool snack to cope with this heat. We then get this super funny moment. Wow, what an excessively douchey thing to do. Reese formulates a plan with the other kids and a fellow ice cream lover who pretends to catch Reese attempting to break in. While the driver's distracted by this, the kids ransack the van and Reese becomes the Robin Hood of ice creams.
And here's your share, Mr. Wells.
That man left us no choice.
I'm going to leave most of Lois's story as a thing for you to experience yourself. I like to try and not give everything away to preserve the entertainment factor, but I will reveal that the story concludes in an explosion of rage.
Okay, if it's nobody's damn dog, then I guess nobody's gonna mind if I just do this.
With the dog now free to roam wild, it eats the pigeon that Hal just freed in his attempts at redemption. It then eats the girl's phone number as she's about to hand it over to Malcolm. So the answer from earlier is no, this relationship won't last. Now we have the difficult question of where to place this episode. It's such a strong contender for #1. If Water Park didn't have the Dewey and the babysitter sequence, or the collaborative defiance moment with Malcolm and Reese, Traffic would definitely be #1. This episode is so smart, but Water Park just feels more at home with me. So Traffic gets a well-deserved #2 slot.
There's something you have to see.
A great opening skit. It's just Reese and Malcolm daring each other to eat increasingly expired food. It's the kind of dumb, made-up game that I used to play as a kid. Me and my friend used to try and make the most gross sandwich with whatever weird condiment we could find. I remember once I made a peanut butter, vinegar and mustard sandwich. Opening skits like this remind me of those times, and I love it for that reason. Also, I love how the show stays consistent in demonstrating the family's financial status. Having this much expired food in the house is obviously a saddening sign of a lower income household, but the kids are making the most of it. The episode has two good plot lines. The first is Francis coming home a week late and missing Halloween. The boys are pretty bummed out about it, but Francis makes it up to them by showing them the blueprints to a slingshot, capable of lobbing rotten eggs and whatever else they can think of, as far as they could possibly wish.
Reese, are you crying?
No.
This plan backfires when the Krell boys build their own, mechanically superior slingshot, and start to return fire.
We're gonna fight! They're Krellblades! They're nothing! We can fight! We can fight! We can fight! We can fight!
The other plot line is Hal trying to stop a local boy racer from driving his muscle car too fast past the house. This ends up with Hal and Lois stealing the car and then realising what a rush it was to own such a powerful vehicle, imagining the possibilities of running away to Mexico.
I'd be Raul. You'd be Consuela.
Consuela?
See.
I always like it when Hal and Lois' separate dysfunctions join together and form this bizarre but functional harmony. It's a solid episode and it takes the number 3 spot. And that means Pilot has been pushed out of the table. We salute you, King. Goodbye.
There's something you have to see.
I have really mixed feelings about this one. It's heartbreaking, it's funny, and it's also a bit dumb. So let's break it down. The heartbreaking stuff is that Lois gives the boys some money to buy her a birthday present, and instead of getting her something she would like, such as this foot massager, they instead spend the majority of it on candy. Furthermore, they struggle to understand why she might be upset about this.
She said she'd be happy with whatever we got her.
And was she happy?
Oh man, we suck.
Hey, isn't this guy supposed to be a genius? It turns back to funny for a short while when Hal comes home, because he realises he's just as bad because he completely forgot it was even her birthday. And then we get this funny scene of Hal shouting the thing he was supposed to whisper.
I can't believe that you could be so thoughtless! We all screwed up really big this time.
Why are you yelling at us?
Sorry isn't good enough, mister. I forgot your mom's birthday!
Now this may be funny, but man, what a bunch of assholes. Lois storms out of the house and runs off to a baseball batting cage to let off some steam. When the family catch up to her, she demands that in order to be forgiven, they must start treating her with some respect.
No problem. It's just that easy, huh?
Yes, it's just that easy.
Then why do I even have to ask? If it's so obvious I need a little human consideration, I shouldn't even have to ask.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I wonder how these lads are going to respond.
Oh, geez, honey, that's never gonna happen.
What?
We're not smart enough to do that.
What a bloody cop-out. Look, I know this is a comedy, but saying we're too stupid is a massive contradiction. We have a boy genius who can memorise credit card numbers, and really this even contradicts basic human relationships. I really do refuse to believe that this family can remember every other birthday and every seasonal event, like Christmas and Halloween, but collectively somehow all manage to forget the mum's birthday. It really just feels heartless. And I do appreciate how well Jane... surname acted in this scene. Oh, I should probably mention too that Francis temporarily dates a girl from Mozambique. It's kind of a nothing story and it has no continuation in future episodes. Now when it comes to ranking, I'm actually having a difficult time with this one. It for sure won't stay in the top 5 forever, but I think it's fair to place it above Malcolm Babysits, purely because of Lois' dialogue reminding us all that she's a human being with feelings.
There's something you have to see.
Reese and Malcolm play the now famous circle game, where you get punched if you look at someone doing this. Many sources online claim that this episode of Malcolm in the Middle is behind this game's surge in popularity, which is just another reason to praise the show. This game carries on through the entire day, and they even include Stevie while both families go out to dinner.
Now remember, Stevie, don't look at this. Or this.
He's good.
At the academy, Francis is throwing a party with some girls, but they turn out to be trashy, and not in the sexy trashy way. Despite an awkward start, Hal and Stevie's dad Abe form a bond talking about their marriages. And we also see this same bonding with Lois. It's rare to see Lois interacting with Kitty as a normal human being. Not shouting, not causing a scene. It was a good episode to see character development with some of these side characters for a change.
To being whipped.
Like butter, my brother.
And just like this circle, this episode is below the table. And now I owe you one punch.
There's something you have to see.
I love this opening skit. It's another simple but solid joke.
No, I have this terrible feeling we've forgotten something. Oh well. Whatever it is, I'm sure it can wait till morning. Oh boy.
The family travel to a casino resort, and Hal offers to take Malcolm and Reese to a ghost town, but he gets lost along the way and they end up in an army artillery range. It's kind of funny when they see a puma blow up. Other than that, the sequence of events isn't all that clever or interesting. The B plot line of this episode involves Francis and Craig. They bond over a joint agreement not to rat on each other for being in the house while the family is away. The problem is this plot line doesn't conclude with any sort of funny consequence. The episode just kind of ends, and there's no closure to anything. The episode overall is kind of forgettable, with the only thing that sticks in my memory is the exploding puma.
There's something you have to see.
Hal takes Lois to a work convention, but he can't help getting into fights with a rival who goes there too. This guy stole his formula for meth or something, I don't know. Back at home, the boys compete for attention from their attractive babysitter, where Dewey, being the most adorable of the three, keeps winning her over.
Oh my god, you little angel. That is the cutest thing.
A mostly boring episode, but I did chuckle at this bit.
I had a nightmare.
Oh, you poor baby. Want to sleep with me?
Yep, otherwise this one isn't for me.
There's something you have to see.
Lucky Aid gets held up at gunpoint, and despite Lois's efforts to calmly send the robbers on their way with their takings, Craig ruins it all by telling them about a safe in the back. Meanwhile, at home, Hal brings home a dusty old closet to restore, only to then realise it's filled with bats. They end up having to camp out in the living room waiting for the bats to disperse through the open windows.
Anybody want my baked potato? It's kind of burnt.
No thanks. Reese, we aren't having baked potatoes.
US intelligence officials are now redoubling efforts to investigate the origins of COVID-19.
I like this episode because Lois takes complete control of the robbery situation, and then she finally tells Craig some home truths about his constant flirting with her.
Ow! Remember that pain. Whenever a thought creeps into your head wondering if there's anything more to the hello I gave you in the morning, you remember that pain.
I like it, but I don't like it enough to be on the leaderboard. Malcolm fakes a mental breakdown to get out of this medieval dance show at the school.
I can't do it. I'm stupid and I'm terrible. I suck at everything.
The school place him into therapy, where he retreats to every time dance practice takes place.
Okay, so I faked it. But with the family I have, it would have only been a matter of time anyway.
Francis becomes everyone's favourite cadet because he knows how to do laundry well. Turns out the years of his mother getting him to do chores paid off. Yeah, that sounds like a fun plot line, doesn't it? What do you mean, no? Oh, okay, moving on then. The only thing I like about this episode is Lois and Hal discovering a second bathroom after clearing out a junk cupboard. And they decide to keep it a secret from the boys.
If we don't tell them, they won't know. It'll just be our little secret.
Well, it seems like there's been no change to this leaderboard in a while, so this season is starting to worry me a little bit. Yeah, this episode goes down here.
There's something you have to see.
Oh no. Oh god, no. Well, it's not getting better yet. In this one, Malcolm ditches out on his friend's project to take part in a school play, as it means he gets to skip classes. He's honestly such a bad friend to these guys. Why do they still want to be around him? He's always trying to ditch them in some way. Malcolm starts enjoying this theatre because he gets to hang around with pretty girls. But the story doesn't really go anywhere from here. Lois gets addicted to stress relief massages, but when the masseuse leaves town, her stress levels return. There's a slight funny reference to Godzilla, as she comes home and, blinded by rage, accidentally stumbles into Dewey's Lego City. Not a good episode, so still no change.
You have to see. There's something...
Okay, so things are looking up. I mean, this one isn't amazing, but I do like it a tiny bit. So Reese loses to a girl in a wrestling competition, and he loses his spirit for bullying.
People looked up to me, and it's gone now and I've got nothing.
So without a sheriff in town to fear, the playground turns into chaos.
Don't you see? The whole school needs you back.
It's a fairly basic plot line, which isn't all that funny, but I did like how we got to see how important Reese is to the schoolyard hierarchy. And it's a clever concept that shows how organised chaos can work. To give you an idea of where I'll be placing this, I'm thinking somewhere here, just below roller skates and sleepover. I really like this one, and no, it's not just because of the afternoon buttery lighting again, it's just an all-round solid episode. So Malcolm accidentally breaks this old woman's arm when he tries to get his ball back from the garden, so he's forced into helping her out while she recovers. This old woman is a cantankerous, xenophobic old cow with gross feet that Malcolm has to massage. She also has a drinking problem and is on heavy medication, which eventually causes her to pass out. Malcolm invites the Krellboyns over, and we get to see their intellect do something useful for once, and not just for some silly gag.
Pernabutol.
What's the dosage?
100 milligrams, 2x3.
You taking Vermitran with that?
No, this seems like a pretty straightforward alcohol sedative reaction.
So it does at least show that Malcolm cares enough to make sure this woman is alive still, but just not enough to respect her possessions. They're eating her entire supply of ice cream while using her cats to put on a stage play.
I've always depended on the kindness of strangers.
Stella!
It's goofy, but I like it. There's an unexpected twist at the end. After Malcolm is spotted joyriding the old lady's car in this famous clip. Instead of allowing Lois to rip into him, she takes advantage of this situation by blackmailing him into giving longer hours of care.
I made a mistake with my medication and he drove me to the hospital.
Huh?
In fact, he's so kind. He offered to come help me before school every day, too.
She's a devious old bag, and again, I kinda like it. There's a cool story at the academy too. Spangler is being deliberately soft on Francis's friend and newly enrolled cadet, Richie.
You're keeping your eye on me? You know you got only one eye? Like Popeye.
That's amusing. I've never heard that before. Carry on.
When Francis confronts Spangler about this, he lets slip his intentions to let the other cadets punish him for getting this special treatment, thus forcing him to quit the academy. A plan which Francis tries to go against at first to be a good friend, but then caves the second Richie acts smugly towards him.
Whatever, man. Sour grapes. Hey, dudes. Cool hoods.
It's not the best Francis story, but it's decent enough. This one is iconic enough to make the top 5. See, I told you Lois's birthday wouldn't stay there too long.
There's something you have to see.
That disgusting sandwich game I mentioned earlier is essentially the opening to this episode.
Give me that.
never gets old.
I had no idea consciously that this was a thing in Malcolm in the Middle. It may well have been the inspiration for me and my friend back in the day, but I have no memory of watching this. The story in this one is that there's a new girl in the Krellboyne class who develops a crush on Malcolm. And at first Malcolm finds her annoying, but then develops a crush on her too. But I can't emphasize enough that she is annoying.
The truth is, nothing's been the same since my brother died in the boating accident. Just kidding.
Her laugh being the most grating part of her personality.
Just kidding.
No! No!
She's an interesting character, and it's funny to watch Malcolm get all angsty around her. There's also a good part later on when Malcolm gets in trouble for throwing a brick through her window. Lois steps in to give a reasonable defense. As she puts it, hormone-riddled teenagers do dumb things that make no sense to adults. And we should remind ourselves of the dumb, cringy things we used to do at that age. At the academy, we get this touching moment of Hal trying his best to do right by Francis, stuck in the balance of trying to protect him from punishment, or should he allow it to happen to develop his behaviour?
Francis, you wrecked Commandant Spangler's car and you weren't punished for it. Another cadet was, and that just isn't right. I love you, son.
Quick editor's note, there's something that Hal says earlier in the episode too, which is really funny.
So, Cynthia, you're in Malcolm's class.
Yeah.
I like how he feels obliged to say something but gives up after the first question. Well, good episode, but it just falls short of the leaderboard.
There's you thing to see.
New neighbours arrive and they host a barbecue. Most members of the two families quickly form rivalries, such as Malcolm and this new kid who keeps getting him into trouble.
Hey, quit staring at my mom's chest.
What? I'm not. Malcolm, knock it off.
But I wasn't.
Get away from me.
Now hear me out. I don't want to sound rude here, but Lois's top is hideous. Lois and this mum form a bitter rivalry too, but it doesn't really have any funny consequences. On the flip side, Hal actually forms a strong friendship with the husband.
The friendship.
The friendship. I'm straight.
Me too.
The Francis storyline isn't interesting enough to bring up. Another average episode.
There's something you have to see.
To the best of my memory, this is my favourite Hal episode. He has a midlife crisis and selfishly quits his job so he can paint his dream painting. This renewed freedom makes him a better father figure and more attractive? Maybe, yeah? I mean, hell yeah, take a look at this guy. If you subscribe to me right now and I earn enough money to be a full-time YouTuber, this is how I'm gonna look. So come on, keep those numbers rising up. You know you want it.
I'm straight.
Me too.
Malcolm, seeing this midlife crisis, worries that he hasn't mapped out the rest of his own life yet. So he starts dreaming about all of the miserable jobs he could end up in. I really like this dream sequence. There's just something so funny watching him worry about this stage of life while still being in school. Again, this is kinda relatable. I had this same worry until about 5 years ago, because I still had no idea what I wanted to be. But I do know now, I want to be this. Most people remember this satisfying moment, when Hal finally finishes the painting, and the family look upon it with awe and pride.
I did it. I really did it.
It's one of those rare moments where the family stop fighting for 1 minute and just enjoy something together. And we as the audience never get to see this painting because it collapses. That is a brilliant decision.
Okay.
I really like this episode, it's gotta be top 5. And I say that with the justification that so far it's my favourite Hal episode.
There's something you have to see.
Lois's parents drop in unexpectedly, and they are just the worst kind of people. Rude, imposing, unjustly judgmental. They treat Malcolm like an outcast because he's smart.
Well, today we finished reading Grapes of Wrath and we're studying advanced algebra.
What is that? Shot at me? I no study algebra. That's because I go to war when I was your age.
They treat Hal like a loser because he can't afford to get a new fridge for the family.
When you can provide for your family, you can have last piece of pizza.
And weirdly, they treat Reese like he's a golden boy, for reasons we can only speculate on. In an attempt to humiliate Hal, they offer to buy the family a new fridge, but when Hal picks one up and asks for the money, they change their mind, meaning they now have a fridge they can't afford to pay for. What a pair of dicks. Later on, Grandpa gifts a live grenade to Reese, causing everyone to panic as Reese stupidly pulls the pin out.
What was that? What was what?
Finally, Hal stands up for himself and says you can either pay for a new fridge, or you can go to jail for endangering the lives of our children. Also in this episode, we have Francis going to Mardi Gras, but is too ill to party. This part of the episode isn't brilliantly funny, but I did smile at least. It's a fine episode, not good enough for the top 5.
There's something you have to see.
In this episode, Lois gets a traffic violation ticket from a cop, who she believes is victimising her because she refused to give him a policeman's discount earlier. This isn't a particularly funny episode, but it has such a great message. So Lois is stubborn, as we all know, and she believes 100% that she did nothing wrong and doesn't deserve this ticket. But then Craig finds security footage that shows she did cause a car to slam on its brakes, meaning that she is in the wrong. The family pussyfoot around the idea of showing her this tape because even though it brings them great joy to prove that she can be wrong sometimes, they also know how much it will crush her ego and possibly cause one of her famous meltdowns. Now here's where I see the lesson. In my opinion, there is no greater power than having the willpower to accept that you can be wrong. Your opinion can be wrong, your perspective is sometimes wrong. No matter how intelligent you are or justified you feel on your position, if you can't accept the possibility of being wrong, you will never grow. And worse still, you prevent yourself from ever connecting with anyone outside of your echo chamber, never allowing a scenario where a constructive discussion can happen. Hal is now forced into that constructive discussion.
In the past 20 years, you have never admitted that you were wrong, and as far as I know, you never needed to. But the facts are right there in front of your eyes, and this time you are wrong!
And then Craig comes along with a new security tape from a different angle showing she was actually right. But the family know it's in everyone's best interest that she continues to believe she was wrong.
You will never, ever tell her of this. But, ever.
Having said that, I do want my episodes to be as funny as they are thought-provoking. This episode to me belongs in the same area of ranking as Red Dress, but I'm going to have to rewatch that one to see how this episode measures up. Okay, decision has been made. This one goes above Red Dress. I feel it's justified, but hey, I could be wrong.
There's something you have to see.
Malcolm has suspected appendicitis, and while he's staying at the hospital, the family can finally play board games and not worry about Malcolm always winning. The Francis plotline is pretty entertaining. He and the other cadets are staging a hunger strike because they got their TV taken away. So Spangler wheels in this omelette station, and it looks incredible, I've got to say.
Oh, what the heck? Give me the works.
Francis gets so hungry that he starts hallucinating, and then mistakenly barters for Spangler's magical hat to end the strike.
We got his magic hat!
What about the television?
Huh?
This part I liked, the rest is just okay. Hal signs Reese up to cooking classes to give him a constructive hobby. He finds out that he's a natural cook and quickly becomes the best in class. Also, the Krellboyne girl is back, and it looks like she might be a recurring character. I honestly can't remember though. What's her name again? I probably should know this by now. Let's look it up. Okay, Cynthia. God, what a nerdy name. So Cynthia organises a party, but Malcolm tries to convince her that no one will show up, so she should probably stop sending so many invites.
I'm afraid you're setting yourself up for a giant disappointment. I mean, when 10 people don't show up, it's a drag. When 300 people don't show up, it's like total humiliation.
On the surface, this would appear to be an act of kindness from Malcolm, but on a deeper level, I think he's projecting his own insecurities, based on his own experiences as a Krellboyne, and he actually doesn't want the school to have another reason to laugh at the group that he belongs to. But then a ton of people show up to her party anyway, for the simple reason of teenagers love parties?
I guess Cynthia was right. If you invite people to a party, they'll show up.
I don't know, I feel like kids do value social status very highly. They wouldn't want to tarnish their reputation by attending a Krellboyne party. The episode ends with Reese returning to his old ways, as he spoils the other food in this cooking competition so he can win, even though he was clearly going to win anyway. I'd rank this episode around the same level as the last.
This is something you have to see.
Reese is convinced his teacher is deliberately marking down his work, so Malcolm reluctantly helps him to study to keep him from being put in the special needs class. But this attempt fails and he gets an F. Malcolm and the Krellboyne gang help him to cheat, and yet again he gets an F. This is where it turns out Reese was right all along.
You let him cheat for you? You gave something he wrote an F? You are out to get him!
We also have a funny Francis story. He gets kicked out of the house for disobeying Lois when she told him to fix the roof. So he crashes at Richie's basement. It's filthy, cold, and Richie watches porn all day long, which is funny to imagine any guy wanting to watch porn with another guy friend. Isn't this some weird taboo? It's like a personal thing, right? Is it just me? What if you got a boner while watching your friend's porn? And what if you both got boners? What if your friend gets a boner because you have a boner? And they only got a boner because it seemed like the polite thing to do as a guest? It's a very uncomfortable situation. I don't like this. Having said that, I do like this episode overall, especially as it ends with everyone who disrespected Lois helping to fix the roof. It's not a top 5, but it's close.
You have to see.
Absolutely iconic episode. But is it the best? Well, let's see. They were quite ambitious with this one, creating 2 separate timelines where a different parent takes the kids to a bowling party. In each of these scenarios, we see how little changes makes a big impact to the experience, comically resulting in both parents wishing that the other one had taken them.
Next time, you take them.
Now, it would take a lifetime to explain each storyline, so I'll just focus on the 2 most memorable, which is Hal's perfect bowling game from the Hal timeline, and Malcolm's miserable bowling score from the Lois timeline. Hal discovers a routine for scoring strikes every time, and just as he's about to score his last strike, getting the perfect game score, Malcolm falls out of the pin dispenser and ruins it.
That counts, right? 300. Has to count.
He ended up there because he was just about to kiss this girl called Beth, but then he got caught up in the machinery of this pin collector machine thing. Fun fact about the actress who played Beth, she went on to voice Sadie Adler from the Red Dead Redemption game. Back to the Lois timeline, Malcolm gets frustrated by his mum's insistence on him doing well at the game, which only makes him perform worse. At Malcolm's breaking point, we get this absolutely classic scene.
Here's your damn strike!
In this same timeline, however, Malcolm does get the kiss he wanted because Beth felt sorry for him. In each timeline, we also get to see how the parent who stayed at home coped with babysitting Dewey. This whole timeline idea was such a clever concept for an episode, and I think the execution is perfect. Now, as much as I love the traffic episode, I have to factor in the fact that the value of that episode is tied into the story of the previous episode, Water Park, whereas this bowling episode really stands on its own. It does kill me slightly to do this, but I think it's the right thing to do. We're moving traffic down, and bowling is going to sit right above it. A tough decision for sure, but position 2 feels right. Francis is home and buys 2 tickets to go see wrestling, meaning he can only take one brother with him, giving him the opportunity to see which brother will go to the greatest lengths to demonstrate their love for him. Yep, a real dick move. And this is why I really don't like Francis in this episode. He comes across so arrogant, which contradicts his typical collaborative nature with the brothers. The rest of the episode I like more. It's a funny story of Dewey babysitting Craig's cat called Jellybean, but things quickly go downhill after Dewey accidentally lets the cat escape.
Don't be scared, Jellybean. They're just eardrops. See? Jellybean!
Hal then leaves sedatives in the cat food with the window open, but this attracts a ton of cats who all pass out after trashing the house.
We'll make 3 piles. Probably not Jellybean, definitely not Jellybean, and not even a cat. We'll start with that possum.
The next disastrous event leads to the house being burnt down, so Craig has to come live with the family. The episode unexpectedly ends with a clip reel of outtakes for this season. Nothing hysterically funny, but I loved seeing somebody behind the scenes stuff. It's a nice way to end the episode, but that's not enough to make it to the top table. The boys find a mini bike and restore it, but Lois forbids them to ride it despite hours of pleading their case to allow it. Reese later reveals that he secretly rode it and then broke his leg, so they have to hide this from their mum. To get Reese a ride to the hospital without giving up the game, they set Craig up with a trap.
Ow! 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 Ow!
Oh my God, what did I do? What did I do?
Craig, reeling from the guilt, decides to leave town, and here's the clip.
Jellybean and I are leaving now. Once again, I'm very sorry. I can't even look you people in the eye.
Yeah, so for this scene, my internet cut out and I couldn't capture the footage. Don't worry, you're not missing anything funny because it's not a great episode anyway. The episode does have a positive spin towards the end though, because Francis redeems himself. And he does so by showing how he looks out for the other cadets, often to his own detriment, giving Hal a reason to be proud. But you've got to be kidding if you think this episode's anywhere near the leaderboard. The Carnival's in town, so the boys form a plan with Stevie to pretend they're sleeping over at the other person's house, meaning they can all sneak off in secret and be unleashed from their parents' control. At the Carnival, they get into trouble with the security staff. A bit too similar to the stock car episode for my liking, and that's why I found this episode kinda boring. Giving this episode some credit, the scene with Hal and Lois getting horny really made me laugh as Hal does this. That's so disturbing, how could you not laugh at this? Regardless, this episode belongs on the same level as Stock Car, but I think I enjoyed that one a little more than this.
あなたが見なければならない何かがあります。
On the way to the city dump to dispose of a couch, Hal realises that it came off the car roof on the way. He later finds out that it fell on some train tracks and caused a train to derail.
Evacuating? Why?
There's been a toxic chemical spill about a mile away. A train derailed.
How'd that happen?
Some idiot left a couch on the railroad tracks.
Now I've got to wonder if anyone writing this took 1 second to think about what happens when a train hits something like a couch. The couch would have just been obliterated. It's not made of heavy rocks. It's a soft thing. It would never in a million years cause a train to derail. At the evacuation centre, Reese begins a black market trade for supplies, and Dewey pretends his parents were killed to get sympathy hugs from MILFs, and also a Game Boy Color.
What is wrong with you? Give that to him!
Hal hears news of some mystery boy orphaned by his sofa mishap and goes crazy with guilt. He collects a ton of charity cash from people to give to the boy when Dewey reveals that it was him all along.
You are both going to apologize to these nice, generous people like you have never apologized before. Do you hear me?
The clever joke here is when Hal demands that he apologises to everyone for this deceit, Dewey instead apologises for the one thing Hal didn't want them to know.
We're sorry we left the couch on the tracks and wrecked the train.
The Francis plotline in this episode is that his friend Eric forces him to go on a double date, with the twist being that the other girl is the 12-year-old sister of Eric's date. But don't worry, Francis isn't on a date with this 12-year-old girl. That would be pretty messed up. It's played off as like a babysitting date. I know it's strange, but amusingly, Francis has a lot in common with a whiny 12-year-old girl.
Some nights, I lock myself in my room and spin my globe, and wherever I point my finger, I just pretend that's where I really live.
I do that too!
Yeah, it's an average episode overall, so it gets an average placement. Lois thinks she might be pregnant, and they mentally collapse at the idea of having yet another kid to deal with. This sets up the episode's gimmick of having flashbacks, sequentially showing her pregnancies over the years. There's some really funny character setups, like seeing an unborn Dewey rubbing up against a dangerously unsafe microwave. Maybe this is why we haven't seen him since being in Malcolm in the Middle. My favourite part of this episode was seeing Hal fail over and over again to be a good, attentive husband.
You know, I think that I should go for a drive before I say something I'll regret.
Oh no. Oh no, not now.
But during the final pregnancy, he pours out his heart to let Lois know that he does actually care about her and love her a great deal. And as they lovingly watch over their destructive boys fighting, they take a look at the pregnancy test and see that it's false anyway. It was a good episode, and I think it deserves to be just under the top 10.